Coming up on today's show, I have our resident mental health hygienist as well as an attorney, and we are here to talk about estate planning. You don't want to miss this show. It's so important, especially in our Black communities where this is not often talked about. So come get the information, grab your friends, grab your family, listen in. Hello, darlings, and welcome to Wake Up Well. I am your host, Portia Scott. And listen, in the background, my producer is extremely mad at me because as we were coming on, I was trying to do a split screen so I could see Facebook and so I could see something else. But y'all listen, y'all know how I do. It is what it is. This is a very professional show. Let me say that to all new listeners. I am a very professional show host. However, this is a live show and this is what happens. Hello, Rena, darling. Thank you so much for joining. So you guys that are coming in, Paula, hello. I am super excited about this show. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this show, how important this show is. So if you have not shared this show, if you have not shared it with your friends, with your family, with your Facebook friends, happy birthday, Paula! From Wake Up Well. We love you so much, darling. But I want to make sure that you guys share this show. Why? Because it's so very important. Godfrey and Erica, hello, darlings. Thank you guys so much for joining over there on YouTube. Val, hello. Thank you so much for joining, darling. So while you guys are coming in, Keisha, thank you so much for joining, darling. Oh, you are gorgeous yourself, girl. Hello, darling. Hello, Deja. Thank you so much for joining. So while you guys are coming in, I want you guys to go ahead and let us know what you are grateful for. What are you grateful for? Chasmin, hello, darling. Ray, thank you so much for joining, darling. Thank you. You guys, I'm super duper excited. So you guys know I am never, ever by myself. I always have our resident mental health hygienist with me. And before we bring him up, there's a couple things I want to do. One, I want to make sure that you guys are in there telling us what you're grateful for. What are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? As well as those that are not part of our texting community. I want to make sure that you are part of our texting community. So text the word impact to 404-737-0867. That is impact to 404-737-0867. Make sure you're a part of this community. One of the things that I do in that community is I check up on you. Why do I check up on you? Because I want to make sure that you're reaching those goals, those visions, and I want to help you execute, right? So I check up on you. I send you some inspiration as well as some of the daily disciplines and ways that you can make sure that you're executing on those dreams, on those visions, on those goals that you have for 2020. So make sure you text the word impact to 404-737-0867. So while you guys are in there telling us how grateful you are, what you're grateful for, I want to bring up my co-host, Martinez Sellers.
Hello, darling. How are you?
Oh, Marty, did you see the boss? He was mad at me. Did you see that? Did you see the look on his face? He was
he gives us all a look, so. But we love him anyway.
It happened so fast. Honestly, it happened so fast. The countdown goes by. It goes by so fast. You never know what's happening.
Right. It is so good. Can I say I loved your new intro?
Which
to the show?
The one that I made.
Yes.
I didn't make it, but the one. Thank you, Marty. You know, I really like that intro too. I think it fits where we are.
Yes, it's very fresh, very light, very clean, and I'm just like, wow, I really do like it. So great job.
Thank you, Marty. I appreciate that. Marty, listen, that's not your regular background. Where are you at?
Well, I am on a kind of, since we have this amazing 3-day weekend to celebrate MLK, I'm having a kind of self-preservative, kind of self-reflection weekend myself. So I got a hotel room in Huntington Beach. And I'm by the beach and just doing some self-reflection, having opportunity just to see some of the goals I want to do, and even some of the relationships that I need to do a better job of maintaining and mending. So a lot of that for myself this weekend.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're going to talk a little bit about that next week.
Okay.
So I am glad you talked about that. Grateful for my wonderful Pastor Jay and awesome husband Butch. Thanks, Val. Thank you so much for joining. So I'm glad you are getting that time away, Marty. It is so needed. And you don't ever know how much you need it until you're there.
Right. So I've gotten a lot done. Yesterday I just sat at the beach. Now I was a little scared because all of us didn't have on our masks, but I had mine on. I'm like, 6 feet even at the beach. But just sitting there, watching the sunset, writing, reflecting, journaling, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Oh, I love it. You know what? The water is like my spirit animal. Like, I just love whenever I'm near the beach, whenever I'm near water, whatever. I feel like I get most of my revelation in the shower, most of my revelation around water or stuff like that. So grateful for my family, friends, and Jesus. You better come on, Godfrey.
Come on.
Yes. So, Marty, what are you grateful for?
You know what? I'm grateful that we have this amazing holiday, MLK, to really reflect on the power, the legacy that he left us. And even during these challenging times, to be reminded of the importance that we live just what our Constitution says. So grateful for that. But the second thing I'm grateful for, I was going to say Paula, but Portia is getting to know Paula last week, and today is her birthday. So happy birthday, Paula. You are absolutely amazing, and it was just great to get to know you. She is just the guru of connections and connectivity, and just to have those type of family and friends, virtual family and friends in my life now, and everyone that you exposed me to. So just grateful for the extended family that we get to continually love on and shout out happy birthday.
Absolutely. I love that, Marty. I love it, love it, love it. Me too, enjoying a self-reflective hotel stay, but not near a beach.
Yes.
Truly grateful. Oh my God, Mom, you so sweet. Truly grateful for being your mother. You have no idea. Oh, Mommy, thank you so much, darling. I love it. Grateful for my sister Tanya is joining in today. Hey, Tanya. Thank you so much for joining, darling.
Right.
We love our first
Welcome
time
aboard.
watchers. Absolutely. Yes. Listen, it's crazy in here, but we hope you just strap on and stay in for the ride. Marty, I am so grateful because I think later last year, John and I started implementing kind of Sabbath, like this Sabbath margin, right? Within our lives. And so we have these Sabbath times by ourselves, but with the family. And so
didn't you have a Sabbath brunch yesterday?
We did. Y'all, listen. It's been y'all know we love us some brunch, and COVID has just cut all our brunches out. So yesterday we had Sabbath. So yesterday we went to brunch. It was so nice. Even Maddox, he was like, I'm loving the vibe here. Like I'm loving the vibe here. And so he just loved being out. He had his mask on. Let me tell you something about Maddox. And Maddox is 7. Maddox was like, I was like, at the table, you can take it off. He was like, oh, no, there's still people in here. I'll wait till my food gets here. Maddox is not out here playing.
I'm not mad.
Listen, so we were able to just have that moment. And for us, it's like doing what you love to do. When you're resting, not thinking about anything. We didn't have anything. We had our phones. We were using our phones, but we were playing Uno on our phones. But just making sure that we had that connection. So I'm so grateful for, just having that as a part of our life now. Is that Sabbath, that time of rest, that margin for rest.
It's so important because what you're showing is so important that we have that family connectivity. And I love it. If we're going to use technology, let's use it for our advantage. So we're playing a family game of Uno. We're doing this together. That's a great way of connecting. Can you imagine if more family... Thank you. I'm going to use that for a couple of my families when I go back to the office on Tuesday. Say, hey, you can use that as a way of playing electronic games with each other. You're still connected, all of that. And it reaches to that younger generation that I promise you, I think they were born with a phone or a tablet in their hand.
And it's so funny, Marty. My family, we grew up, we spent a lot of time together. And I think one of the things while I'm talking about family, we're definitely getting ready to go into the meat is I want, as we are starting to think about estate planning, as we're
Right.
starting to think about all of leaving a legacy. I want us to really change and shift our mindset. And I'm going to bring Courtney on in a minute. So I really want you guys to be in a state where you're kind of thinking about your family, those
Right.
people. What do you want? John always says this. What do you want the headline of your life to be? He usually says it in corporate spaces. So it's like, what do you want this quarter headline to be?
Right.
Of your
Right.
company, of your organization,
that's
of your
good.
department. What do you want that to be? And so I stole it from him. And I often think like, what is my headline going to be? And I want it to be, I want my kids to know that I thought about them so much, that I loved them so well, that I planned for this, that I planned for that. So that's why I'm talking a little bit about family a little more than usual, is because I think it's
Right.
so important that when we think about leaving a legacy, it isn't always I don't have enough money, because we're going to talk about that. How
Right.
to build, how to estate plan when you feel like you're not wealthy or you're not rich or you don't have enough to leave. But I think it's
Right.
very important.
But that's a mind shift, because we have the money to do whatever we want to. Those things we value, we find a way for it.
Yes.
And so it's really about valuing estate planning, valuing so we don't have to have, Portia, I'm tired of chicken dinners and begging on corners on things that we should have and could have taken care of a lot earlier. But
Yes.
now that we have the time, let's have these conversations while we got nothing but time right now. And this is the best time to start planning about our future and
Right.
how to make sure we are, like you said, leaving that legacy. So important.
Yes. And for all of my believers out there, the word of God says a good man leaves an inheritance for his
Yes.
children's children's children.
Come
so
on.
it says something about it. I'm just putting it out
Right.
there because if people want to,
I
we want to be
understand.
deep, let's just go ahead. But yeah, but you know what, Marty? I want to bring in our next guest. So
Yes.
it's so funny because I have known Courtney since she was going to prom. Listen,
What?
when she was going to prom, which makes me feel kind of old, but now
Mature.
Right, mature.
Seasoned.
Now she is an attorney, honey. She
Come
is an
on.
attorney, and she is barred in Georgia and I believe South Carolina. And she has done a lot of this work. She's done a lot with
Love it.
families. She's done a lot with estates and all that stuff. And this is really something that she's passionate about. She
Right.
wants to make sure that our communities know what they need. So without further ado, you all welcome Courtney Gilchrist.
Welcome.
Hey, Courtney. I
Yeah,
think
she's
she
coming
made-
on.
She's coming on. She made
There
me a
she
little.
is.
There she is.
She had to
Hey,
make an
Courtney.
entrance.
As we all do on this show.
Right,
It's
right.
terrible.
Hey guys.
Courtney. Hey, Courtney. Courtney, how are you?
That's right. Thank you guys for having me. Hey.
So, Courtney, one of the things we do with everyone is, what are
You
you
got it.
grateful for? Yeah, we can hear you. Uh-oh.
I would say I'm grateful for life, especially after 2020. It just makes you reflect, because a lot of
Right.
people didn't live to see 2021, and I
Yeah.
can just all I can do is just thank God for His grace and His mercies. I mean, He's true been to my family. My maternal grandmother just celebrated 7 years around the sun. I have to say life, because some people aren't privileged enough to have their elders still here to share that
That's so
knowledge
true.
with them. So I'm truly
So true. Absolutely.
that.
I love that. So I want to jump into this content, but you know what,
Yes.
Marty, you talked a little bit about this being this mindset shift.
Yes.
And
yes.
so I, as we're going into this, one of the things that I hear, and that even for myself, when I was very, very young, I had an aunt, and thank God for that aunt. And she used to say, get life insurance on your parents, Portia. Have life insurance on your parents. And I did not. I have to admit, I heard what she was saying. I knew how important it was. I didn't. Thankfully, my parents are still alive and I get it right. But I remember her saying that, and she said it because I'm telling you, whenever someone passes away, or even now in our, she never worries. She literally never worries because she's had her own sisters and brothers covered, her parents covered. Like and at the least, she had that. So we never had to worry about it. But I think sometimes when we talk about estate planning, we feel like if I'm talking about estate planning, I'm thinking about my own demise. And that is that is a hard hurdle to get over. So how do we change that thinking from I'm estate planning, getting ready for, or my death is going to come any quicker because I estate plan. But how do we get over that, Marty? Just that mindset so that when we go into this content, we go into it with the new lens of looking at it.
I think the lens we have to start looking at is we have to have this conversation about death. And too often we're saying, well, if we're talking about estate planning and what's going to happen after I leave here, we're like, oh my God, are you sick? Are you sick? You know, we can't wait till cancer happens, but we're being proactive in this so that we now know exactly what your requests are. What are your wishes once you're gone? It doesn't mean that you're going anytime soon, but then it will prevent a lot of families fighting. We know, especially in our Black and brown communities, as soon as there's death, big mama or dad or anything like that, families lose their mind. They go crazy, and we have all this tension that comes out. Well, mama never liked you. We can always get all of this stuff settled beforehand. It really does bring about order in our families, and we have to be willing to have these conversations, be honest, because we don't like talking about money and our feelings about our spiritual stances. We will fight tooth and nail over that, but we have to really be honest about this is how much my policy is. This is where the policy is located at in the safe box. This is who I want to have access to it, and this is who's going to control it if anything happens to me. It's not slighting anyone, but it's about decency and being in order, and that's a mind shift and change. And we have to also, my mother and I are having that. My mother, as you know, lives with me, and so we're having that. We're actually going over all her affairs and have contacted an attorney as well as a financial planner so that we can make sure that she's planning the life she wants to live with the retirement that she has left in there. So there's no questions or anything. I want my mom to have the very best life. She worked hard. And my job now is to make sure she gets to live the best life that she desires to live in her latter years.
I love that. Courtney, let's jump in. So let's talk a little bit about having a will and why a will is so important. I have life insurance, right? Isn't that enough? Like, why is having a will so
That's
important?
Good.
I think there's just a little bit of delay.
Just a little delay.
Well, I tell people that life insurance policy is separate from a will. It's just those proceeds. Just a little.
Uh-oh. It's breaking up a little bit.
Hold on.
Courtney.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Is it better?
I guess
Well, it
no,
was.
it's not better. It was better. It was better. It was better. I know there was a delay at first. So Courtney, once you get back, just say something and we will.
Can you hear?
Yeah, but it's breaking up
Now,
really bad. Yeah, it's breaking up really badly.
Kind of sound like Darth Vader a little bit.
Means how and when the beneficiaries.
Yeah, it's breaking up. Courtney, this is what I would do. I would come back in and come back on. So we'll take you off and then we'll talk through it. And then once you come back, we're gonna make sure we answer those questions
Which
for
explains
everyone.
how and when your beneficiaries.
Yeah, she might. It looks like her connection is bad.
I know.
there.
I think it's her connection.
Yes,
You guys,
yes.
but I think it's important. I talk to Courtney a lot. And I think as you get older, you don't realize how important it is, right? So I remember one of the things I would say at the basics, get life insurance.
Right.
Get life insurance, especially even if you're young, life insurance is very, very inexpensive. I can tell you I have a pretty high policy. This is not with, and get a policy. Number two, get a policy outside of your job. Why? Because if something happens, if you get fired, you no longer take that policy with
Policy
you.
with you.
So you need something outside of your current employer, so that if anything happens, you always have that life insurance
Right.
policy. So
Right.
for me, when I learned that, I always kept life insurance with my employer, and then I took one out for myself, and I have a very substantial life insurance policy, and I think my policy is $23 per month.
Right.
$23 per month. And so I say, while you're young, go ahead, get that policy. That's a large policy, because you're healthy now. So when you go to the exam, your premiums are going to be extremely, extremely low. As you get older, they do get higher. Bodies start to change, all of these things. So so it's an issue. Yeah, Paula said definitely get one outside of your job. Absolutely. So that you know that you have that. You have that. I even when I was on my job, the job insurance was extra. But what I had outside, I was like, this will take care of my family. And they will be good. And usually the rule of thumb that most financial planners will tell you is that you should have life insurance policy at least 10 times your current income.
Exactly.
At least 10 times your current income. Because what happens is, especially if you have a family, something happens to you, your family needs that. They've been dependent on this. And so if you have a policy 10 times your annual income. Marty, I'm going to go ahead and try to bring Courtney back up.
Okay.
And see if we are able to get her on now. All right, Courtney, it looks like you are back with us. So start over. Why is it important, like the will so important, and the difference between I need a will and life insurance?
Good.
Okay, so a will is imperative because it's a legal document which explains how and when your beneficiaries will inherit your property or assets. It will also instruct the executor or your personal representative how to distribute your property and resolve any outstanding debt that you may have. Now, some people may place instructions on their desires on who will have guardianship over their minor children. That may also be placed within a will. So it's imperative to have a will, because if you don't have a will, then the courts will determine how your property and assets are distributed at that given point in time, because everything will then pass through the intestate laws, which every state is different regarding how your property will be dispersed if you do not have a will. Now, if you have what we call a life insurance policy, most life insurance policies are going to pass outside of probate state, because under the governing rules and regulations for that actual policy, if you read the fine print, you actually have to list who the beneficiaries are to determine who the proceeds will go to. And most of those policies are going to ask that you actually list at least two people. Now, with me personally, I do have my minor godson who is actually listed on my insurance policy, but I also have someone of age just in case I leave this earth before he's of age. And that person will determine how those proceeds are dispersed to him.
Yeah, Courtney, that makes me think. It's funny because our audience ranges, but I do have younger kids. And so when we think about a will, God forbid my husband and I go together, right? And so my kids are under our two younger kids. Obviously, we have an older son that is older. But what happens if, we have this life insurance, but we don't have a will to say, one,
Good question.
How it will be dispersed among the kids? Like, what is that? I mean, does that just leave my kids without the money that's in the life insurance, or what does that look like? I think that's very important.
Most companies will honor your wishes. It just depends on the state that insurance policy is issued, as well as where you reside at that given point in time, where you may not have a will if you predecease, as well as your spouse at the same time. Some laws do have what we call, like, if you and your spouse die within 120 hours of each other, which one would be considered to predecease the other, will be determining upon the governing rules and regulations for that state. Now, say if you and John do predecease at a very early age and you leave behind your minor children, and all you do have is that life insurance policy, then that life insurance policy will be dispersed accordingly. But when we have minors involved, most likely, if it's a large proceed, it will be tied up in probate court naturally, where the court will appoint some form of guardianship or an administrative to actually make sure that they're monitoring those proceeds until the child does become of age,
Hmm.
so
So I
that you
think,
won't
and I
have someone just spending up the kid's money.
Yeah, I think that's important too. And then I also wonder the people taking care of the kids, like, do they have enough money to take care of the kids? So that's why I think I think I want to drive home why the will is just so important is because in the will, you're able to establish in the event that my husband and I predecease each other, this is who should have the children. This is how the money should go. Are you able to be that specific, Courtney, in your wills? Like, are you able to really go that deep into the will?
Yes, you can. Because actually, with Georgia, a minor, let's say hypothetically, we'll treat it like a car accident. Under governing rules and regulation for minor settlements, anything over 15,000 must be approved by the probate court. Because what the probate judge is going to do is look at those proceeds and determine who is paid what, depending upon the outstanding debt that's owed, as well as if there's any type of attorney fees or associated costs or expenses that may come from those proceeds as well. And then whatever else is left, normally if it's 10,000 or above for the state of Georgia, the probate judge is going to place it into a trust. And then that's when you really start to get into these components of structured trust and when you disperse the funds, if you disperse it upon their 18th, 21st, or 25th birthday, and if there be any kind of restrictions. The same thing normally apply when we're talking about insurance policies for minors as well, where it's a large amount to make sure that whomever is their caretaker, that you're going to have to account for those proceeds. So normally there's what we call an administrator that's appointed to monitor that account. And every year there's an audit of that account as well. So when we're talking about the will component, what most people like to do is within your will, you'll reference a trust account that you create for your minor children. And you can potentially use the proceeds from your life insurance policy to actually fund that trust for the minor children, as well as place some forms of restriction on it.
Absolutely. I love that. I know that Marty actually Paula said good information. I know Marty had a question. I think this is really, really good because this is something that I'm
Yes.
sure you see.
Yes, Paula, because I mean, Courtney there, because I know that oftentimes, one of the things I like to
Mm-hmm.
do is do a family tree. I think it's very important that I like to say, shake the family tree so that we can see some mental
Yes.
health disorders that might be in there. And especially as we're seeing so
Mm-hmm.
many of our loved ones suffer with dementia, Alzheimer's, and all of that. What is your suggestion for how do we make sure that our loved ones, once they lose, their mental capacities, how should we be proactive about protecting those loved ones? Because we don't want just, some of the siblings aren't good money managers. And so we protect mom, dad,
Yes.
grandmama, big mama, godmama, all of them in that. What is your recommendation and your legal advice, and how should we set up programs like that while we're still in our right mind?
So good.
Well, in order for an individual to have a valid will, you must have
Hmm.
the mental capacity to enter into a contract. And for the state of
Right.
Georgia, I'm a little rusty, it's 14 or above, if I'm not mistaken. I kind of get it crossed up with South Carolina sometimes.
Hmm.
But the mental capacity component is non-negotiable. There's certain
Mm-hmm.
questions as an attorney I must ask an individual before I allow them to execute that will.
Right.
And if there's any
Right.
signs that they lack the capacity or they've been diagnosed with early dementia, me personally, I will not proceed with it because I tell
Okay.
people it's not worth it. I work too hard and I'm not going to jeopardize my livelihood.
Right. I understand.
But what I do tell people this is when we're talking about the elderly, it's imperative that we sit them down as early as possible and try to avoid even getting to that point.
Yes.
Because there's a different route that we would have to go at that given point in time where we need to go through the courts to get
Mm-hmm.
guardianship over that individual prior to even executing any additional legal documents. So the sooner the better. And if you have a child that you know is born with a defect or may develop some type of mental defect at an early age, go ahead and get the proper legal documents so that later on down the road you'll know that they're cared for properly, as well as with our elders.
Absolutely. I love
That was
that.
great.
Courtney, one of the things I think we hear too is people who we don't have insurance. We can't
Mm-hmm.
afford insurance, or by the time I heard this information, the insurance is expensive. But I think one that can't be, we have to figure it out. We have to figure
Mm-hmm.
something out because your families are left. One of the things I always say, and I know I make a joke about it, right? But I don't want to have to grieve and worry about how to bury you. Like at the
Mm-hmm.
very least, it's
Mm-hmm.
so
Yes,
much. Grieving is so heavy by itself. So if you can just grieve but not have to worry about the financial implications that comes
Right.
on there. And so Courtney, what do you say when someone says, "Well, I'm not wealthy. Like I don't make this. I don't have any money. Should I leave a will?"
yes, you should leave a will. I tell people like this. Far too often we leave our loved ones debt and grief. And
Yes.
those are two things that, grief is something that we can't avoid. You have to go through the grieving process. It's something that you learn to live with. You never get over the loss of a loved one. If anyone tell you otherwise, then don't listen to them. But you do not need to be rich in order to leave a will behind. I think that's the misconception that a lot of us hear a lot because we truly do not understand the process, or it's something that goes unspoken within the African American community far too often because we just fear that a lot of negativity, or we going to have this black cloud around our head if we do talk about it, rather than, okay, let's sit down and let's come up with a plan of action. Because far too often I see all of these GoFundMe accounts when someone dies
Mm-hmm.
asking for proceeds, where I'm like, okay, well, every time you go out to eat, that's money that you can place to the side for life insurance policy. Every time you go on that vacation, which I encourage because we all need a mental break, but something as simple as placing $5 to $10 aside a week, just starting out small, so that you can purchase a small policy, but you want to be able to work up to that $1 million policy, because that $1 million policy is going to be able to not only provide for your children, but your grandchildren, children. Where now we're starting to talk about generational wealth. When you
Mm-hmm.
say, I don't have anything to leave, well, you have a car, you have jewelry, you have clothes, you were residing somewhere. If you have real property, whether you're the right out owner or you own a percentage in that land, that's something to leave to your children or to whomever you decide to leave it to be able to start off on the right foot rather than, okay, mommy gone now, so now we got to figure out what to do. Not only do we have to figure out her burial arrangements, we also have to come up with an income to bury her because it's not cheap. Not only do we have to come up with the money to bury her, but at the same time, we got to be able to process that our mother is no longer here. That's a lot on any individual.
Mm-hmm.
So
So true.
if you've ever lost a loved one, you already know how it feels. So why even place your loved one in that predicament where it's something as simple as, oh, okay, you could take it upon yourself and try to do it yourself and Google, or you can schedule a consultation with an attorney so that you really know what it is that you're doing of what's going to benefit you and your family in the long run to build that generational wealth. And not only an attorney, because I tell people I don't practice tax law, and there's some tax
Right.
penalties that come along with an estate. So I make sure that my clients are on, hey, don't just talk to me, but talk to your accountant or that CPA, because we want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you have all the knowledge that you need in order to make a decision. And I want you to walk away feeling good about the decision that you made.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's funny. Nicole actually had a question. She said, "Any recommendations on good millionaire policies?" We're trying to work our way up.
I know that's
Courtney, I'll let
right.
you answer that. But Nicole, you know who I went through? I went through. There's quite a few companies, but I went through Xander. And what Xander does is that they will match you up with different companies. And so they will show you, they will give you quotes for how old you are, depending on what you put in. If you smoke, if you know, have any pre-existing conditions, all of that information. So they'll gather all that information and then they will give you a quote with a couple of companies, and you can look at the companies, you can look at the different premiums, and decide, you know, which one you want to. But I went through Xander.com. But Courtney, are there any that you know of, or any insurance companies that you know are reputable and
Not off the top of my head, but most credit unions have great companies that they go through, as well as discounts that they give to their clientele. Prime America is another one that I hear about a lot. And then whomever your employer use, always help people like this. Be cognizant, make sure that you're proactive, have a health insurance policy outside of your place of employment. Um,
Mm.
that's just something that my parents taught
Yeah.
us at a very young age, where you may invest into that policy, but what's going to happen to that policy if you leave that place of employment? So you
Mm-hmm.
always want to take whatever your employer give you, but in addition to that, make sure that you always have things on the side that you really pour into, because that policy is going to be with you regardless. It's yours, and
yeah.
it's not tied to an entity. But most companies are going to give you at least about 10 to 25,000 free. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't
Hmm.
decline it; you take what's free.
Right.
But if you're going to invest in a policy, I encourage people to invest in a policy outside of your place of employment.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
But
so
Portia, I
that's the
true.
think you made
policy
a
that you really want to fund.
Yeah,
you.
you know, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no. I said you made a point earlier because we can use the little, like you were saying, Starbucks money. So we don't go to Starbucks once a week and we put that money. We don't go to the fast food once a week, and it can be something as simple as that, the money that we waste. And when we really look at it, when we start disciplining ourselves and look
Right.
at what we really are, most of our life insurances, and I'm equally as guilty, is in our closet, on Nikes, on shoes, on clothes, and these things that we wear one or two times, where we can
Yes.
now use that money to make sure that we are, and I love what you're saying, leaving a legacy for our children. So important.
Yep, absolutely. I really do think it's important. And thank you for that. So Vanessa said, make sure get a whole life insurance policy. There's one thing that I tell people all the time is make sure. So when I went with Xander, they talked me through all of the policies that made sense. For me, that didn't make sense in my thing. And whole life seemed to, they tend to be a lot more expensive. However, it depends on what's important to you. So whole life was great for Vanessa. So when you get to Xander, the thing thing that I like is that they had educators to kind of talk you through what policy you were getting. So for me, a whole life didn't make a lot of sense for me and what I wanted to do, and for what we needed our policy to do, and the amounts of our policy. So, but I love that because you get to see the difference and you get to talk to, I always say, whoever you get life insurance from, if they are not willing to educate you, they're probably not the right people, because they're just selling you something. And you don't want people to just sell you a product, but you want to understand your product and what that looks like for you. So I think that's so important. So Courtney, I do have a question though. I want to know, tell me a little bit about what is the difference between like a will and a living will? Because you and I kind of had that conversation. And so I want to know what the difference is between the two.
Okay. So when we're talking about a will versus a living will, it's a difference in the time in which the document is actually executed. So a will takes legal effect upon your death. And then we have a living will, on the other hand, it gives you instructions, pretty much to your family or whomever you list as your representative and your doctors, as far as what medical treatment you do or do not wish to have. Should you become incapacitated and cannot make that decision for yourself at that time. So a lot of times when we're talking about a living will, most people think of attorneys, or more so, if I'm incapacitated on life support, do I want you to pull the plug or to leave me on life support? And if so, if I become in a vegetative state, am I instructing you to go ahead and pull that plug? As far as you can also answer nitty-gritty when it comes to blood transfusion. You know, if I'm on that operating table, it may be against my religion for me to have a transfusion. So, of course, I'm under anesthesia where I can't make that decision myself. Who's going to instruct my medical provider on what my wishes are? So, those are the differences, as far as between the will and the living will.
Nice.
I think that's so
Which
so very
I encourage
important.
everyone to have both.
Okay. Courtney, so I got a question, because people are probably asking this. When I'm thinking about going to get my wills done, and I'm going to answer Nicole, we'll answer Nicole's question in a minute, but I want to get to this because we talked about saving money, your little Starbucks money, put it up, especially as you're younger. You know, it's not expensive, but save your money, put it up is very important. But when I'm talking about going to see a lawyer, I'm scared to go to get a will because of the cost. So what does that cost look like? Just coming into an office and maybe getting the bare minimum. I guess just tell me what my costs look like for that. Because I think that's also another thing that keeps people away of how much it may cost. And it may be out of my price range.
Well, what I tell most people, you're going to start off with a consultation before we even start drafting documents.
Nice.
Consultations run really, I can't quote anyone else, but depending on your geographical location and that law firm, anywhere from about $150 and up.
Okay.
And that's just for an hour. Sit down with the attorney and to talk. You know,
And
so
that's
Marty, I tell
affordable.
people
Marty,
there's
yours is
ways
going to be
around
end
those
up.
have legal aid.
Okay,
Yeah.
so about 150 and up. I was laughing at Marty because Marty's in California, so you know everything is like 10 times, 10x. So he's gonna be paying up. But I think
California, you probably talking about $1,000. Now I'm just
Hey, wait a minute.
What's going on? What's going on? But listen, I think I wanted to ask that question because I don't want people to be scared, right? But I think it's important to listen, you guys. let me tell you, if you don't want to call, email. If you are nervous about calling and getting a no or getting the answer,
Right.
send an email. Send an email to a lawyer to say, hey, I'm thinking about, I would love a
Yeah.
consultation to talk about
Mm-hmm.
wills and getting my estate planning together. Find out what it is, what their consultation is. You will never know unless you ask. And we can
That's
no longer
right.
sit in the background and say, well, I can't afford it. I don't know what it is. Ask.
Yes.
Ask.
We've
And
we've
honestly,
heard
if
no
this,
before.
yes, and honestly,
Yeah.
let's say we're thinking about our parents and we have multiple siblings. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
in order to get mommy and daddy a will, this is what's going to happen. We cannot no longer worry about that they're not going to do it. We need to get this done. How do we all
Right.
get together and pay this $300? Because if it's seven of us or a
Yeah.
hundred, like it is with Marty, then that then that fee then
Right.
that fee is split up against the siblings, and this is a great thing. So I think it's important that as we're talking through this, that we have to come up with ways instead of coming up with
Right.
excuses. Let's come up with some solutions to get this done. So I challenge each and every one of you, if you don't have
That's
a will, if
good.
you do not have life insurance this week, I want you to hop on somewhere, get you a quote, find out how much it's going to be.
That's
Find out
good.
what the policy is going to be. Find out what that looks like for you. That is your homework this week, is to find a life insurance policy. If you already have life insurance, but you need a will, I want you to email an attorney. If you know attorney, call them and see. You got some friends
Right.
who can help me. Like, we can no longer sit back. So this has been
Right.
just
That's
some
good,
great
Portia.
information. I did want to ask Courtney, one of the things that we kind of talked about, and I wanted to talk about money, because when we talk about wills and
Mm-hmm.
trusts, we think of trust fund babies. So we think of millionaires and billionaires and wealth. And so one of the things that Nicole said was, can you have more than one life insurance policy? I'm assuming yes, but you know what they say about assumptions. Courtney, I'm going to let you handle that.
Yes.
So yes, you can. Well, yeah, of course you can, because you can have one with your
Yes.
job and
I
outside of
encourage
your
it
job.
Right.
because I do.
Right.
Yeah, she encourages it. Oh, let me get
Yeah.
on, give me another policy, see if I can get me another little more money. No.
Yes.
Okay,
The more
so
the
there was
merrier.
yes. Okay, I guess that was not something. I think that was something. I thought I saw another comment up, but anyway. Okay. One of the things that I want to talk about, I'm sorry, I didn't read it.
He was
one
a
of the-
troll.
Oh, okay. One of the things that I want to mention to Courtney, you're single. And so I have single people in this community. Do I need a will? Do I need a trust? Do I need all these things? I'm single. So do I need it?
Yes, your stuff has to go somewhere. Yes, I think we have to get out of, well, not think, I know, we have to get out of the mindset
Right.
restricting ourselves within the box, thinking that
Yeah.
because we have this one label of I'm single,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't need these imperative legal documents to instruct someone on how I want to
Mm-hmm.
carry out my wishes, my dying wishes at that point
Right.
of who's going to receive my car, who's going to receive my house, all the way down to my stocks and my bonds, my bank account. Who do I want those proceeds to go
That's
to?
true.
Right.
I'm not going to leave it within the hands of the law and have a judge tell my
Decide.
family what
What they
the
can do.
law says, because it's too late not to take the initiative to go out there and get these documents drafted. I have control over what it is that I want to happen, as well as you may be
Mm-hmm.
single today and married tomorrow.
Right,
But
right.
you have to have the mindset of I'm planning for not the family that I have, but the family I want. And once you
Mm-hmm.
adopt that mindset, you start to see that everything shifts at that point. Like
That's
my
so good.
mentality is, oh, okay, I don't have any biological kids, but I have godchildren. And my godchildren, I look at them as if they're my own flesh and blood. And if I
Mm-hmm.
leave this world, the bond that we have, it's not going to die with me. It's going to live on, because it's a certain lifestyle that our sons are accustomed to. I
Yeah.
have already conditioned them that it is, regardless of if I have children of my own, that this is what I'm going to leave for you. This is the
That's
legacy
right.
that I've created for you that can't no one destroy. So
Mm-hmm.
it's up to you what you're going to do with that legacy once I leave. And the same mindset is for my future children as well as my nieces and my nephews. Is
Mm-hmm.
is breaking that generational curse of we're no longer going to tolerate the things that our elders failed to do because they weren't properly advised. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to establish this generational wealth so that our children's children can eat for days and they never have to do anything else. They're
That's
not going
so
to
good.
ask to sit at the table. They're going to arrive to the table and tell the individual, we created this table. You know, we
Yeah.
went out, we killed the food, we cleaned the food, we cooked the food, and now our
Come
Mm-hmm.
on.
people. So
I
that's
love
the
that.
mindset that we have to start generating for our people.
I love that. I love that. Marty, I feel like you had something you wanted to say.
Oh no, I just love that because as we're doing that, and I love how she's breaking down, Courtney, how you're breaking down what I always say, the stinking thinking of our past. That we have to move past that. We have to start creating and speaking it. I say it this way: we speak it till we
Yeah.
believe it. We start believing it until we live it, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how we create this legacy. And we have a responsibility to do that. Too many of us have not left legacies, and we're
Yes.
continuing to start from zero time and time again. Enough is enough.
Absolutely, absolutely, Courtney. I love that. I wanted to make sure. One of the things I
It
think
is.
it's important as we're thinking about this. John Henry and I traveled a whole lot. I traveled for work. He traveled for work, and so we would both be gone. And I can't tell you how many times in my mind I'm like, Lord, don't let anything happen to both of us while we're gone. But my mom always knew like this is the life insurance, like this is where it is, so at the very least you knew that. And I had a friend, and one of the things that when my friend told me this, I was very, very convicted because they had a family member that passed away, and their family member set them up where there was everything. You knew where everything was. So I think when you talk about estate planning, it is also like Courtney said, these are the keys to the kingdom, right? This is where the house is. This is where
Right.
the paid off the deed to the house is. This is where the land ownership is. This is where this is. This is where that is. And it made me think that if I leave, can my family really go in and say, okay, these are her debts. This is whatever. I mean, John would know, the debts and things like that. But as far as when the kids get older and making sure you have these things set up. And there are, I know there's attorneys that do it. There's also financial planners that do this, and they do it to the extent of they really walk you through every checklist of things. So at least that part, I don't know about the will part, but I know about the checklist of just your estate planning. I mean, step by step by step, who's contacted first, who gets this, who gets that. And I think it's so very important on the families, and it shows it really is a way to show your family, I loved you enough that I thought about this to make your life easier in my passing. And then, Courtney, one of the things you talk about a little bit, and I just want to make sure you kind of give us a definition of, we talked about probate, but for people who have never had anything, maybe anything left to them or anything like that, we had a big probate issue years and years ago in our family. And I was like in high school, I learned about probate, but really talk about what does that mean when you say the estate is in probate, or, this is in probate. What does that
That's
mean?
good.
And what does that mean for us if we don't have wills and, that speaks to that?
So probate is the administrative proceedings for carrying out, either they going to execute the will, or your property will pass what we call intestate. Intestate is according to the governing rules and regulations of the law. And just to put it in simple terms, hypothetically say that we have a married couple with two children, and the wife predeceases the husband.
Mm-hmm.
So what will happen is if that wife did not have a will, then the husband, or 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the husband who opens up an estate with probate court. And then from there, what the court is going to do is pretty much review everything. By law, the husband would take 50%, and then the children would take the remaining 50% to split. Because if you're married, it naturally half goes to your spouse. Some might say 1/3 to the spouse, and then split equally amongst your children. Now, where it starts to get complicated is if you have children outside of that marriage, there's a different percentage that they would take compared to the children of the marriage, where the child outside the marriage normally takes a larger percentage as opposed to the children of the marriage, because under the law, the children of the marriage naturally going to take a larger percentage once that other parent
The other
deceases.
parent.
So I tell
Mm-hmm.
people like this: if you want a person to have something, it's imperative to go ahead and just get those
Yes.
documents, probate court. But it just depends on if it's going to be the simple execution of that will to carry out your last wishes, or the court having to enforce the law. And a lot of times when we leave it up to the court, I tell people like this: I hate probate cases because they destroy families. So I tell people,
Yeah.
if you coming to me beforehand. I'm gonna help you draft the documents. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to be the attorney that's standing next to you in court, because
Right.
I hate to see how families are destroyed. When it comes to
Right.
money, people become just, they step out of character. And they will
Mm-hmm.
fall out with their loved ones over a few
Mm-hmm.
$100,
Mm-hmm.
a few thousand. Me personally, I just count that on my shoulders because of how I was
Mm-hmm.
raised, where it goes against my norm and my values and morals,
Right.
where we weren't taught to bicker and fight over something that's material and
Right.
that you
Mm-hmm.
can't take to the grave with you. You know,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and to begin with, it's not even yours. So why are you
Mm-hmm.
Right.
fighting over it? But
Right.
money destroys people, and money destroys families when they're breathing. So I tell people, get that will.
Mm-hmm.
Please get that will, Big Mama. And if there's a certain child that you want to have that house, you leave
Leave
it
it.
to that
Yes.
certain child. I don't care who
Yes.
Right.
feelings gonna be hurt, but that's what you want. Those are your wishes, because we don't
Mm-hmm.
know what that other child calls you throughout the span of your life. Because a lot of your
Right.
kids, have different personalities. You have one that's more mature than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there's some kids that we like to call it advancements in the legal world, where you're going to get that money from Big Mama, because Big Mama is always bailing you out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reason why Big Mama left the oldest child in charge and left you little to nothing, because she know that
Right.
this oldest child is going to carry out her wishes and make sure that you're taken care of, because the
That's
maturity
good.
isn't there. So
That's
those
Right.
are
good.
things that you can address within your will. You can get as creative as you want to.
I love that. Courtney, I love
Mm-hmm.
all this information. It was
It
just
was
so, so,
great.
so good. I know Vanessa said, as my mom was older, having an elder attorney, I guess, give that information was excellent information for their family. Somebody that could really probably speak to her elder mom, having an elder attorney, and kind of having that trust,
Right.
that information was so important to their family. So we're going to close out this show. Was so, so very
Mm.
good. Courtney, do you have any closing words for our audience, as well as how can we keep in touch with you? How can somebody email you, girl, and be like, hey, I know that consultation. Can you tell me how much you charge?
I'll talk to you for you family.
I'm saying no. I
But
know.
you guys can
I'm
always
saying
call me
everybody
on
else.
my business cell phone 843. You can always get in contact with me through email or on my cell phone. I tell
Okay.
people, please leave one message only, and I'll be back. And me, if it's something that I cannot handle, I don't believe in taking on more work
Right.
than
Right.
what's required.
That's good.
I share love and try to keep it within the community. So I just want to make sure that you receive the services that you're requesting.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And Courtney,
You
what's
know,
that email
uh,
address?
so be on the lookout.
Courtney, what's that email address? I know.
My first and last name at gmail.com. So
Okay.
that's COURTNEYGILCHRIST at gmail.com. Oh, you have to remove
Excellent.
the dot between my first and last name portion.
Okay. No
Oh,
dot.
okay.
Okay.
No dot.
No dot.
So it's all one word. It's all one
Yes.
word. All right,
Yes.
Courtney, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, for your
Yes.
free consultation that you gave us for a whole hour. We appreciate you, girl.
Yes.
Thank you, Courtney, so much. We definitely have to have you back. That is her email address. Daryl, you can leave it up for a little bit. Marty, any closing words?
Just as she was saying, we want to encourage families to have this open dialogue. We have to. If we're going to leave a legacy, since the theme of the show today was legacy, we have to have the legacy by talking to one another. Let's push past the fears and have a conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Portia.
And then how can we get in touch with you, Marty?
Yay! Well, on my Facebook page at Mental Health Matters with Marty. And also, yes, Mental Health Matters with Marty on that. And my website at mentalhealthmarty.com. And I encourage you, if you have not been a subscriber of my podcast show, please listen to Mental Health Matters with Marty podcast on all of your podcasting streaming networks that you use. Thank you, Portia.
Thank you. All right, you guys, thank you so much. I know it looks like we're a little over, but we started a little late too. But I want to make sure that I have to put this out. Excellent information. Thanks, Courtney.
Yes.
I have to put this out because my man, John Henry Scott III, tomorrow he is releasing his podcast, Chart to Heart podcast. This is a culture and engagement podcast. I'm super excited because he is not only talking to C-suite level leaders, but he is talking to all leaders within organizations and really talking about culture and engagement. I'm super excited about this podcast, and I want to welcome you guys tomorrow. Mark your calendars at 7 p.m. We are not doing a podcast launch party, as he said, but it is a podcast launch party. But bring your coffee, bring your tea. It's going to be like a podcast release coffee lounge. It's going to be a little laid back. So I'm be on my best behavior. So you guys make sure that you guys come out, support the podcast.
7 p.m. tomorrow.
I'm so excited. 7 p.m. I'm getting in so much trouble right now today. 7 p.m. tomorrow, right here. Same bat time, same bat channel, but we are going to be releasing this podcast. I'm super excited. This podcast, and I'm gonna let him talk about it. It's being released at a certain day. And the podcast is dedicated to a very special person. And so I really want you guys to come in and just support that podcast. So you guys, thank you so much. Always for showing up. If this information was amazing, make sure you share the rebroadcast. Let us know. We are so thankful for you guys. You all know that you can always text the word impact to join our community to 404-737-0867. It's funny because when I text people back, they're like, wait a minute, is this Portia? I'm like, yes, this is actually me texting them back. I do text back. I do talk back. So even if you have questions or you have comments or you have feedback about the show, if you have some people that you're like, I think they would be great on the show, I would love to hear all of that. So just text impact to 404-737-0867. I would love to hear from you all. So you all know we don't leave any episode, we don't close any show without this declaration. Waking up is automatic. Showing up is intentional. Today I will show up.
Show up.
See you guys next week.
Show up.